We saw an incredible sports redemption story over the weekend, which makes us wonder, who needs redemption in the NFL? At the top of the list is Lamar Jackson. We'll explain on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Lauren Cox. On today's episode, again, we're going to look at some folks in the NFL that need redemption. We're going to talk about some coaches. We're going to talk about some teams, but we'll start with the players at the top of that list, including Lamar Jackson. Before I get into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Lauren, as with most folks around the sports world yesterday or on Sunday, I was watching Rory McIlroy with an incredible redemption win in the Masters to complete the career Grand Slam. And now look, this is not Locked On PGA Tour, I promise you that, but it did get me thinking about folks that need redemption in the league, and Lamar Jackson was the first guy I came up with. Look, Lamar is a multi-time MVP. He's an elite player, but at the end of the day, like Rory McIlroy, he's had a lot of success in his career, but he's also had some big-time failures and is more known and associated with taking a big step back in the postseason from a production standpoint. So if there's a Rory McIlroy in the NFL, to me, it's Lamar Jackson, a successful guy who has a little bit of a stink associated with him that he has to find a way to knock off. Rory did it. I think Lamar can do it, but I'm more skeptical of it because I haven't seen it.
And I think the parallels work nice there when you think about just sort of the roller coaster of emotion, watching Rory have the opportunity to win it and then blow it and then go to the playoff and still have another opportunity and finally get through the super high highs and the low lows. Like we've gone along that path with Lamar Jackson now a few different times in the playoffs where it's like, finally they got him receivers. Finally they got him this. Finally they got him that. Like this is going to be the opportunity. And the moment's right there. And even in some of those cases, it's not even him blowing it individually, but it's just the team not being good enough and you wanting him to rise to that truly next level, that Patrick Mahomes level, instead of just, that right there, right behind him that Rory had been sitting in for so long.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. And the reality is, whether the Ravens rise or slide this year, will he rise to that occasion like we're talking about, is something that my guy Kevin Allstriker from Locked On Ravens talked about recently.
Some of the numbers for Lamar will go up. I expect him to be more efficient. I expect him to do X, Y, Z, and whatnot. But to expect him to have just year after year after year of growth in terms of, let's say, passing yards, passing touchdowns, whatever it is, that is unrealistic. So while Lamar, again, the year that he had last year was incredible, broke multiple records, and again, the fact that he didn't win MVP and no award in general, there were a lot of deserving candidates. I think Lamar was certainly one of them, as I said on the show. But again, the fact that Lamar went out there and had 41 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, one of the best touchdown percentages in NFL history, right? If he continued to do that, by the time, he's 28 right now, by the time he was 33, he'd be throwing for 60, 70 touchdowns a season. It's not realistic to expect that. But I think that he can still play in the stratosphere. And if he, even if he doesn't play just a little, like if he's a little worse in 2025 than he was in 2024, that's still a heck of a season. And that is still more than enough to get the Ravens to where they want to go.
They add DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. They retain Ronnie Stanley on the offensive line. They're going to look to add pieces in the draft, as Baltimore always does. So I think there's a chance that they could be better as a team without Lamar necessarily going over what he did last year. But at the end of the day, I just don't buy it. I can't, until I see Lamar do it in the playoffs, I can't believe in it. But he definitely has the talent to do it. And I think there would be a similar reaction if Lamar came out and had an incredible postseason run and went even to the conference championship or, to the Super Bowl, even in a loss, just to see him rack up a couple of postseason wins and do it in regular season Lamar fashion. I think he would have a similar outpouring of adulation as Rory McIlroy did.
But I think it speaks to the sort of championship sports culture that we have here, where it's like Rory's been a great golfer for a long time and has done a bunch of, he didn't have the career Grand Slam, but he had the other major championships. And yet I feel like we weren't really appreciating him very much until you finally got this one completed. And Lamar's the same way, right? 2-time MVP, has been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for the last half decade now. Okay, well, until you win in the Super Bowl, until you get to the Super Bowl and make those postseason win, well, ho hum, you're not good enough, Lamar. When he's been great, he just doesn't have that last big thing on the top.
Yeah, and listen, the reality of our society is it's not just about doing it once. We want to see sustained success. I'm wearing my Nike Just Do It shirt in honor of Rory McIlroy today, but it does remind me of a Drake lyric, another GOAT in our society. He says, Nike don't pay me to do it. They pay me to just do it again. So we got to see that Lamar's had success. We need to see him do it again and on the biggest stage. And it's not just once. You got to do it multiple times to be one of the greats. But somebody who I don't think is quite one of the greats, but we definitely want to see them do it again is Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins is a guy who I think needs redemption here. You go to Atlanta off the injury, you get benched. Now you have no chance to be the starter. You're being dangled out there in the media as a trade piece and all this. I just don't think Kirk Cousins wants his career to end this way. He needs a redemption arc. He needs to go to a team, have some good moments, go out in an okay way. But to me, I don't know if Kirk Cousins is willing to accept his situation enough to find that redemption.
Yeah, there's another golf comparison here. Certainly not where their career was before this, but just where they are now. Like Kirk feels like Tiger Woods, where it's like, coming off the Achilles injury, Kirk did not look the same even when he was quote unquote, healthy to start last season. It's like he's now 37 in August before the season starts. Like I just don't know that we're ever gonna get prime Kirk Cousins again. Just like I don't know where we're gonna get prime Tiger Woods again. Not that those two were on the same level at all, but just where they are right now. Yeah, even if he goes to Cleveland or whatever, it's just Kirk is got to try and just ride this out as best as you can. But I'm not optimistic for any kind of sunset at the end of the rainbow here.
I would compare it to version 1 of Joe Flacco in Cleveland. Like Kirk Cousins needs to be a backup. The young, exciting guy gets hurt. He comes in, takes a team to the playoffs still, just being that smart, savvy veteran. You know what I mean? He needs one of those Joe Flacco things. Just that then he can ride off in the sunset with happiness and peace. You know what I mean? So, but to get to that point, he has to accept that he's not a bona fide starter anymore, that anywhere he goes, they're probably going to have a young quarterback. He might even be the backup to that young quarterback. He's in that situation now. Maybe that redemption can happen in Atlanta, which I think would be, sweeter for the narrative. But at the end of the day, all of that can only happen if he accepts that he is a backup or a fringe starter in the NFL at this point.
Well, and it seemed to me like throughout Kirk Cousins' career, yes, winning is obviously a priority, but for him, it's been about the contract, right? It's been about where can I get the most guaranteed money? Let me get my family's financial future absolutely secured in any way, and making sure that the money, it's not about the most money possible, but the most secured money possible has seemed to be a pretty big priority for him. And then if he can also win there too, that's important as well. He's not just signing with terrible teams, but he's kind of at this point now where you don't have a lot of the leverage to get the team you want or the money you want. And you maybe sacrificing that and saying, hey, I've gotten my $100 million deal. Now let me just go for opportunity somewhere and try and get the best team around me.
Yeah, maybe he'll make that decision at some point. You're right, though. He hasn't before. Listen, I'll just say this. Going wherever the money is highest and taking off Tuesdays during the season might not lead to being one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, but you're going to be rich and you're going to be happy. So there's something to be said about that. But with that being said, somebody who may be rich but may not be happy is Josh Allen. And him and the Buffalo Bills need to find a way to break that Buffalo curse. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? I know it's happened to me between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment. It is easy to lose track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. Stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much money I was spending on online shopping, and now I can budget smarter and save more. And instead of trying to juggle multiple apps to keep my finances in check, now I can use Monarch, track my spending, check my finances, even plan my long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, Lauren, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about some players I think need some redemption with Lamar Jackson and Kirk Cousins, but now I kind of want to focus on some teams, and we have one at the top of the NFL, and then I also have one at the bottom of the NFL. Look, redemption looks different for different people, okay? That's something you'll learn in life, but I do want to start with the Buffalo Bills. Look, I don't think that I'm breaking any news here. It goes back more than just this Josh Allen era, the 13 seconds against the Chiefs and all the losses to Kansas City. But you go back further. Lauren, 90s baby, I know you're a little younger than I am, but Buffalo losing 4 straight Super Bowls. Kick this, kick left. Every chance they get, they can't get the job done. And now they get to this Josh Allen era, and even with an absolute freak at quarterback, it's still not good enough. So if there is one team out there that I think needs some redemption and needs to break this curse, I'm going with the 2025 Buffalo Bills. And look, I think last year was a bit of a transition year, and they were a little over their head in terms of how well they played. I think this year they could be even better than they were before transitioning to the new version of themselves.
I keep sort of looking for where that improvement is really going to rise from. Like if they're overachieving a bit last year with Josh Allen trying to carry everything along the way, like, yeah, of course they added Joey Bosa on defense, and that can go, that can go a long way depending on what level of play they get from him. But like, you're still kind of looking around waiting for something to elevate them besides just how much of a hero can Josh Allen be and how far can he literally drag them there. And it's sort of similar conversation to Lamar, right? Of just chasing that Mahomes tier of, can you elevate a group around you that you probably shouldn't be able to win a Super Bowl with, and yet Mahomes finds ways to get them to the big game every year? Well,
I think the improvement, like with Kansas City, you mentioned Mahomes, it's going to come in the draft. They need to hit on some of these draft picks. Like Keon Coleman, is he going to take a step forward and be that true number 1 wide receiver? They gave up Xavier Worthy. You know, people forget that they gave up Xavier Leggett, which that looks like a fine move. Who cares there? You know what I mean? But they need somebody in their receiving group. Like, Dalton Kincaid has never truly become the guy that maybe people thought he was. I think he's a very good player. He's probably a top 10 tight end in the NFL. It's not like there's a ton of good tight ends in the NFL right now, in my opinion. So I think he could be a top 10 guy, but is that good enough? No, they still need somebody on the outside. Amari Cooper clearly wasn't good enough to get that job done. I think the Bills could be a team where maybe they make a move up in the draft. Maybe they make a small move up to get, you know, a Matthew Golden, a Luther Burden, a Emeka Egbuka would be so perfect for Buffalo. I know they have Khalil Shakir on the inside, but I think Egbuka could be used as a Z at times. And Josh Allen does really well with those slot guys. So I think where they need to take the step forward is on the defensive line and then in the weaponry. And the question becomes, the weaponry, how's it going to get better if you trade away James Cook, which is something they may be doing? And my guy Joe Marino from Locked On Bills talked about that.
I think if the Bills were to trade James Cook, I would guess his trade value would be around a 3rd-round pick, maybe a 3rd-round pick and some change, depending on how high the 3rd-round pick was. But that would kind of be my expected compensation. I think the challenge, though, is that this is a deep running back class, and I would guess that any teams would rather just get a cost-controlled rookie with the draft capital versus acquiring James Cook and then also staring at an extension and having to pay him. So I don't think the running back class really helps the Bills make a trade if that's something that would happen. I think the ideal path, though, with James Cook is for the season to play out and for the Bills to get the most out of James Cook this year and then let him walk. And if they let him walk, I would assume they would probably get pretty close to a third or a fourth round pick as a compensatory pick. Now, the silver lining there is that it can't get unhealthy, right? You don't want him to be a distraction. You want him to be involved in your offseason program. You don't want him holding out of training camp. You don't want to put yourself in a position where the offense is going to be set back because he's not getting the reps. And then all of a sudden it's a couple weeks before the season and he shows up and now you got to get him going and get him calloused up. I think that's where it gets unhealthy. So yes, I think my preferred path with James Cook is play out this season. Obviously he's got every incentive in the world to be the best version of himself and produce, and then let him walk in free agency.
Do you agree with Joe on that plan, or would you look to trade James Cook?
It feels to me like a mid-season trade is when his value, or maybe late training camp, or I don't think his value is going to be the highest right now, because as he said, everyone's looking at this running back class and saying, yeah, why would I wait? But that team that at the end of training camp has a running back injury, or 6 weeks into the season they lose their running back, and it's a team that's in the playoff hunt, and you're like, man, we can get. It's not going to be a great pick, like he said, but something more than right now. There's a lot of supply and not a lot of demand, but the demand will be a lot higher at that time, as long as Joe said, Cook is healthy, participating, and not causing a ruckus, and that's something that the Buffalo Bills front office is going to need to navigate very, very carefully.
I agree with you 100% that the demand is not going to be high, and Joe's reasoning with the good running back class is 100% right, which is why I say if they do get a third round pick, a late third, like a compensatory third, or they do get an early fourth, like in the 100 to 115, I would consider it. James Cook is the perfect example of this. When people say don't pay running backs, this is what they mean. James Cook is a good running back. Like, he's a good player, no doubt about it. He deserves to have a contract, but he is the perfect example of a player that you do not pay at the running back position. He's not good enough. You can replace him. What if they went, and got a Travion Henderson or something like that? I think you could take a guy like a Bashol Tootin. You could get a guy just as good as James Cook is going to be for much, much cheaper. It's a perfect example of why you don't pay running backs. And that's, yes, you pay Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley, but guys like James Cook, those are guys that you don't pay and you just move on. I do want to mention one more team though, Lauren, before we move on from the teams. The Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, hear me out. I know they're at a totally different level of the spectrum, but the Jags have embarrassed themselves throughout multiple different drafts, cycles, seasons over the last few years. Trevor Lawrence, people are jumping off his bandwagon as quickly as possible right now. He was a number one pick, a national championship winner. You come through this season, the whole situation with Trent Baalke and waiting to fire him and getting left at the altar by Ben Johnson, some other guys, and then have to go get Liam Cohen. Like, it's just been a disaster run for the last couple of years for the Jags, falling apart and not winning the division a couple of years ago. Like, it's just been despicable. So if there's a team at the bottom who has the ability to get some redemption here and turn things around quickly, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. And as a franchise and an organization, they desperately need it.
Yeah, and that feels like a team that's close, right? I think that's why they
closer than it seems, closer than they look, closer than it's been.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've got a quarterback you should be able to like. You got weapons for him now, and Brian Thomas Jr. looks like a great piece. They've got some offensive line, like
good rushers, good wide receivers, good running back stable. Like,
so it feels like if they hit correctly here with Liam Cohen, which is a big if, but like
it is the big if.
It feels like that can be the impetus to like it's sort of like we talk about the Chicago Bears and Ben Johnson, where it's like if you could just get that part right, you've got some talent there that just needs
exactly
glue to kind of pull it all together and raise everybody up. And of course, you still have to keep hitting on free agents and draft. It's not like you're just automatically there, but it feels like it should be right there. But I feel like they felt like they're right there a number of times in recent years, and doesn't ultimately end up working out that way.
Jacksonville feels like one of those teams where it's like they hit in the draft and it still doesn't matter. Like Trayvon Walker maybe hasn't been as good as Hutchinson, but he's been a good player. Like, he's a good player. Josh Hines-Allen, one of the best edge rushers in the league. Tyson Campbell is a good player. You look on the other side of it, Brian Thomas Jr., awesome. ETN's been pretty solid. Like, I don't know. Trevor Lawrence, I still think that Trevor Lawrence is a good player. I just can't shake it no matter what happens, even though I'm in the division. Like, it would be great if Trevor Lawrence was a bum, but I just can't I just can't accept that he's not good. I just can't. So I agree with you 100% there. It's a team that looks like they should be able to take a step forward. And if they just get a decent coach in there, they should be able to do that. But with that being said, coaches, time to talk about some coaches that need redemption. And we'll start with the different coasts. Do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, the NBA playoffs are here. Go Lakers. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets if your bet wins again. Just place a $5 bet, and you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether I'm picking my favorite team or I'm doing some player props. I want to do Luka 3-pointers or maybe LeBron assists. Doesn't matter. FanDuel has so many different ways to bet my favorite player props. And even after the game tips off, I can combine live prop bets into a same game parlay for a big chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com to claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Once again, that's FanDuel.com. All right, Lauren, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. It's a Redemption Monday edition, or I guess Redemption Tuesday is what we should be calling it. But we talked Lamar Jackson, Kirk Cousins. We talked Buffalo Bills, Jacksonville Jaguars. Now I'm going to go from players and teams to coaches. And like I said, we're going to be talking about the different coastlines here. The first coach that I want to bring up, Lauren, is Kyle Shanahan. And I think that Shanahan is one of those guys who, in my opinion, one of the best coaches in the NFL, but because of how long he's been in San Francisco, things could go stale. And I think that he may not be on the hot seat this year, but it's definitely warming up. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. Our guys over at Locked On 49ers discussed.
This is a season where Kyle Shanahan, I don't want to say hot seat, but does the seat start to get warm for Kyle Shanahan here? How important is this season for the 49ers as a whole, including the brain trust of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch to get it right and win games early in 2025?
I have a hard time understanding how the 49ers, this version of the 49ers, where they are now, are going to be better heading into this season than they've been over the previous 3 years. Just because of injuries, age, those are, to me, huge issues. And the guys that you are counting on, that's the big part of it. You are counting on Trent Williams. And I get it, Trent Williams, he wants to play till he's 40 years old. If he's playing at a very high level, take a step back, have some injuries, a little bit older, what will that look like? All right. Christian McCaffrey, a couple years ago, best running back in the NFL, had an amazing season. Last season, hurt, running back, will those injuries kind of continue to pile up for him? He was clean for a year and a half or 2 years. What will it look like moving forward? Brandon Ayuk, big contract. Gets hurt, torn ACL early in the season. He's coming back. Is he going to 100% be himself as soon as they step on the field, right? And the injury conversation surrounding guys that they're going to have to count on, they're going to be there. So if these guys aren't amazing like they were, how are you going to be better? So when you talk about this being a big offseason, you're going to have to bring in guys that can help take some of the pressure off of the guys who have been elite, that have helped carry this roster.
And I'm sorry I haven't seen him bring in anybody of note. Like, I haven't seen anything that's going to change things. Not only that, but they got rid of a bunch of, they lose Charvarius Ward. They lose Deebo Samuel. They lose Jalen Moore. Like, I just feel like they're in a position now where they need to be as good as they were a couple of years ago. And there is no avenue for them to do that. And at some point, you could say John Lynch is good at his job. You could say Kyle Shanahan's one of the best coaches in the NFL. But at some point, the mission and what they're doing just go stale. And I think that we call it shocking, surprising, whatever you want. But I think we could see Kyle Shanahan fired after the season if they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Brock Purdy conversation only makes this that much more complicated.
Exactly.
Too, right?
Yes.
Like, man, what do you
pay them and then they're not good? Could be ugly.
And a big contract makes it that much harder to build an actually good team around him. But you don't I mean, there's just such a difficult spot, especially for a team that's like, they got the 11th overall pick in the draft. Like, they should be able to get a really good player, and yet, like, it's still not enough. There's just so many pieces, like, kind of just barely held together by Scotch tape here, that you feel like it's still pretty good structure, but do you just tear it all down, even though you think there's still a lot of potential there? Like, how do you admit defeat? And then, it's like one of the more difficult, hard to, some situations are just like bad. It's like, oh, that team doesn't have any hope. But like the 49ers are in this like tough, what do you hold on to and what do you reset kind of spot, where it's like, do you give up on a good thing before it's over because it's not perfect? Well, I don't know.
At the end of the day, they're in the same place that caused them to trade up for Trey Lance. They're stuck because they don't have a quarterback that elevates the roster. And that means that the rest of the roster and everybody else has to be so good, it makes it very difficult to sustain that over 7 to 8 years, which is kind of the run that they've been on here with Kyle Shanahan. So I just don't think it's just not sustainable what they're trying to do unless you have a high-level quarterback. Like, it's just impossible.
And that's a good reminder that how much they were set back by that Trey Lance trade. Like, we're seeing the impacts of that now, right? Because of course,
yes,
they were a great team. Then they give up some draft picks. You don't really notice that they're not getting those draft picks, but it's 2 or 3 years down the road when you don't have all those young players on rookie contracts that are ascending players to fill in for Trent Williams, to be another receiver. They're like, how much farther they could be had they not swung and missed on Trey Lance. Like, this is that debt coming to pay.
Yep, 100%. The bill always comes due. But one other team or coach that I want to talk about is Mike Vrabel. So Mike Vrabel was ousted in Tennessee. It was a bit of a power struggle. Mike Vrabel, not publicly, but it's pretty well known. Mike Vrabel did not want Rand Carthon to be the general manager. He thought he was in over his head. He thought he was too inexperienced. He wanted to hire his own guy, Ryan Cowden, who's now with the New York Giants. And then Rand Carthon gets fired immediately after the season, after Vrabel gets fired, proving that Vrabel was right and Rand Carthon was not the right guy for the job. And hey, if Mike Vrabel was in a power struggle because he didn't want to work under Rand Carthon, maybe Mike Vrabel was right then, because the Titans agreed 1 year later. All right, you're right. Rand Carthon isn't right for the job. And now Rand Carthon's doing media for CBS. But with that being said, shout out to Rand. Rand was always awesome. I enjoyed covering him, but reality is the reality here. But with that being said, Mike Vrabel gets to go home to New England. He gets a franchise quarterback, a young franchise quarterback, which he never had in Tennessee. He gets to build the roster completely his way. He's got a top 4 pick in the draft, ton of free agency money, blank canvas for Mike Vrabel. If he's going to have redemption, it's now. If the Titans were wrong to fire him, and the bad offenses and the bad press conferences and some of the boneheaded decisions with how to run and build a team, if the Titans were all wrong and Mike Vrabel wasn't responsible for any of that, then he should immediately find a way to build things up correctly his way in New England. This is a Mike Vrabel moment. What happens in the next few years with New England? He can prove the Titans are morons. They're one of the worst franchises in NFL history. They let go one of the top 5 coaches in the NFL. And now I'm going to show you all, this is how I build my football team, and we're going to be a sustainable winner for seasons to come. Mike Vrabel could get massive redemption here in New England after the way he was fired in Tennessee.
It's just a shame, because if there's one team that he's not going to get any sympathy for having his redemption on, it's the New England Patriots, right? Like, it's like, oh, can Mike Vrabel turn around the New England Patriots? He's not going to get a lot of people saying, yeah, let's see these Patriots really turn around because it's been so tough for them. Oh,
right.
Great story that'll be for Drake.
But this ain't Tom Brady, man. He ain't got Brady in the building.
I mean, listen, you want to see what you want to see what Vrabel can do outside of that structure, but I don't know that he's like some great story of like this guy who was wronged so poorly in Tennessee. I mean, he won some playoff games, but this was not like some genius coach that everyone was clamoring for. I mean, he had a whole year off of and no one really wanted him the first time in the hiring cycle. So he was a consultant for the Browns or whatever, and then Patriots are right there to quickly sign him when the opportunity became available. But okay, like we'll see what Vrabel can do, but I don't find myself going like, yeah. It's not like Rory, right? Where it's like, he's come so close so many times. Vrabel had like, he had a good year in there and then kind of flamed out. And okay, let's see what he can do this time.
It's clear I'm too close to the fire, Lauren. I'm just too close to the fire because I know what it'll mean for me and what I'll be hearing nonstop if Mike Vrabel goes nuts in New England. But with that being said, again, folks, just a reminder, It's a long life out there. You yourself can get redemption as well. Never give up. But with that being said, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Lauren Cox. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.